Have you noticed how people feel different lately? The way they speak, move, react to things, almost like something invisible has shifted beneath the surface of everyday life. Conversations feel shorter, smiles look thinner. Even simple kindness seems to require more effort than it used to. You walk through a grocery store or sit in a waiting room, and there's this feeling in the air, something you can't quite name but definitely sense. It's like the whole rhythm of human interaction has changed tempo, and nobody's talking about it. But here's what I've come to understand, and it's the truth. Almost no one tells you this isn't random. It's not your imagination, and it's not just about getting older and seeing the world differently. Something fundamental is changing in how we experience each other, how we process emotion, how we carry ourselves through the day. It's happening biologically, it's happening psychologically, and if you look closely enough, it's happening at the level of consciousness itself. So today, I want to explore a question that's been sitting in the back of many people's minds. Why do people seem so strange right now? And more importantly, what does it reveal about where humanity is heading? Let me start with what you've probably felt yourself. There's this great shift happening in human behavior, and it's not subtle once you notice it. People seem more drained than they used to be, even when life isn't particularly hard. They're emotionally flat in some moments, overstimulated and reactive in others. You can be sitting across from someone you've known for years, and suddenly it's like there's a wall between you. Not anger, not conflict, just this odd distance. They're physically present but somehow not fully there. I've spent a lot of time thinking about systems, how they work, how they break down, what happens when they're pushed past their design limits. And when I look at human society right now, what I see is a network that's been overclocked. Think about a computer processor running too hot for too long. Eventually, it doesn't crash all at once. It starts to glitch. Performance degrades. Responses slow down or speed up unpredictably. That's what's happening to us, collectively. We're running on a system that was never designed for this level of constant input, this much stimulation, this degree of connection, without actual intimacy. Technology was supposed to bring us together, and in some ways it has. But what we didn't account for was how it would rewire the way we relate to each other. We're connected to hundreds, sometimes thousands of people through screens, but we've lost the art of being present with one. Every notification is a small interruption, every scroll a micro-decision, every post a performance. And the human brain, which evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to handle maybe a few dozen deep relationships, is now trying to process the emotional noise of the entire planet. We weren't built for this, and the cracks are starting to show. But this goes deeper than technology and habits. If you really want to understand why people feel so different, you have to look at what's happening inside the human psyche when pressure builds without release. I've learned over the years that anything you suppress doesn't disappear, it just waits. In engineering, we call this stored energy. In human psychology, it works the same way. When people bury their fear, their anger, their insecurity, when they push down what they're really feeling because life demands they keep moving, keep performing, keep smiling, all of that gets stored. And eventually, it has to surface. Think about it this way. Imagine you're holding a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, maybe even a long while if you're strong enough. But the moment your grip loosens, that ball doesn't just float up gently, it explodes to the surface. That's what's happening collectively right now. Entire populations have been holding things down, grief that wasn't processed, rage that wasn't expressed, fear that was never acknowledged, and now it's erupting in ways that seem irrational, chaotic, even frightening. People lash out over small things. Public conversations turn toxic instantly. Families fracture over disagreements that used to be manageable. It's not because people are worse than they used to be. It's because the pressure has been building for so long that the release is uncontrolled. And here's the thing most people don't realize. This isn't happening just individually. It's happening to all of us at once. When you deny something personally, it shows up in your behavior. But when an entire culture denies something collectively, when millions of people are all suppressing similar fears and anxieties, it doesn't just show up in individual lives. It shapes society itself. The anger you see in strangers, the numbness you feel in conversations, the sense that people have become more robotic or disconnected, that's not random madness. It's the system trying to heal itself by revealing what's been hidden. The wounds have to become visible before they can be treated. So, when you feel that someone's acting strangely, when you sense that shift in the people around you, what you're actually witnessing is something profound. You're seeing the human unconscious, not just in one person, but in all of us, rising to the surface. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it looks like chaos. But chaos is often the first stage of transformation. Before any system reorganizes at a higher level, it has to fall apart at the current one. Now, let me take this a step further, because psychology alone doesn't explain the full picture. To really understand what's happening, you have to look at the culture we've built and how it shapes the human mind from the ground up. I've always been fascinated by systems design, not just in technology, but in civilization itself. And when you step back and look at modern society with fresh eyes, what you see is something deeply strange. We've created a world that's supposed to make life easier, more comfortable, more connected. But somewhere along the way, we built a system that's incredibly efficient at everything except nurturing the human soul. Think about what most people's lives look like now. They wake up, check their phone, they go to work, often doing something that doesn't deeply matter to them but pays the bills. They come home, scroll through feeds of other people's curated lives, compare themselves, feel vaguely inadequate, distract themselves with entertainment, then go to sleep and do it again. There's nothing overtly wrong with any single piece of that routine. But when you zoom out, you realize something's missing. Meaning, purpose, the sense that what you're doing actually matters in a way that feeds your spirit, not just your bank account. We've become a culture of consumers rather than creators. We compete rather than collaborate. We perform for approval rather than express from authenticity. And the result is this quiet, mechanical loneliness that so many people carry but never name. You can be surrounded by people, flooded with messages and likes and comments, and still feel completely alone. Because what the soul needs isn't attention, it's connection. Real, unfiltered, vulnerable human connection. And that's become one of the rarest things in modern life. I've seen this play out in so many contexts. You sit in a restaurant, and half the people are on their phones instead of talking to the person across from them. You attend a gathering, and everyone's taking pictures to post, rather than experiencing the moment. It's like we've all agreed to live one step removed from our actual lives, documenting and broadcasting instead of inhabiting and feeling. And over time, that distance becomes normal. People forget what it feels like to be fully present, to have a conversation where nobody's half distracted, to sit in silence with someone without it being awkward. We've replaced intimacy with performance, and most people don't even realize the trade they've made. And here's where it gets even more interesting and a little unsettling. When a culture loses meaning, when people are going through the motions without a deeper sense of purpose, something happens to them physically. Because the mind and body aren't separate systems. They're one integrated whole. What begins as a thought pattern, as a cultural norm, as a way of living, eventually shows up in your biology. And that's exactly what's happening now. Let me explain. Over the last couple of decades, science has started proving what mystics and philosophers intuited for centuries. Your thoughts, your emotions, your sense of purpose, or lack of it, all of that directly affects your physical health. Not in some abstract, metaphorical way. I mean literally, measurably, chemically. Your gut, for instance, isn't just a digestive organ. It's producing somewhere between 70 and 90% of your body's serotonin, which is the chemical that regulates mood, calmness, the ability to feel content. It also produces dopamine, which governs motivation and pleasure. These aren't minor players. They're the foundation of emotional stability. Now, what happens when that system gets disrupted? When people eat processed food stripped of nutrients, when they're exposed to pesticides and additives their bodies don't recognize, when they take antibiotics that wipe out entire colonies of beneficial bacteria, when they live in constant low-grade stress that inflames the nervous system, all of that throws the gut ecosystem into chaos. And when the gut goes out of balance, serotonin and dopamine production collapses. Suddenly people aren't just physically unwell, they're emotionally unwell. They're quicker to anger, slower to forgive, less capable of joy, more prone to anxiety and depression, even when their external circumstances haven't changed. This isn't a metaphor. It's biochemistry. Imagine entire populations walking around with disrupted gut flora, unbalanced neurochemistry, inflamed nervous systems. They're irritable without knowing why, numb without understanding the cause, reactive in ways that surprise even themselves. And because it's happening gradually, because it's invisible, most people don't connect the dots. They just feel off. And they assume that's normal now. But it's not normal. It's the body trying to function in an environment it wasn't designed for, on fuel it can't properly process, under stress loads that far exceed what human physiology evolved to handle. And this ties directly back to what we were talking about earlier, the strangeness you sense in people. Some of what you're picking up on isn't just psychological or cultural, it's biological. When someone's neurochemistry is out of balance, when their body is in a chronic state of inflammation, it changes their personality. They're not the same person they would be if their system were in harmony. Patience shrinks, clarity fades, compassion, which requires emotional bandwidth, becomes harder to access. They're running on a depleted system, and it shows in everything they do, how they speak, how they react, how they carry themselves through the world. And here's what makes this so critical to understand. Most people have no idea this is happening to them. They don't wake up and think, my gut bacteria are out of balance, so I'm more irritable today. They just feel like life is harder, like people are more annoying, like everything requires more effort, and because they don't understand the root cause, they can't address it. They just adapt to feeling worse, and that becomes the new baseline. Multiply that across millions of people, and you get a society that feels fundamentally different. Because it is. So when you notice that people seem strange, that they're not quite themselves, part of what you're sensing is this biological shift happening beneath the surface. It's not all in your head. It's real. And it's more widespread than most people realize. But even the psychology, the culture, the biology, even all of that together doesn't capture the full picture. Because there's something else happening. Something that goes beyond what you can measure in a lab or explain with psychology or trace back to cultural patterns. And this is where most people stop looking, because it requires you to consider something that doesn't fit neatly into scientific frameworks or rational explanation. I'm talking about consciousness itself, and the possibility that what we're witnessing isn't just a breakdown, but a breaking through. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets really interesting. For most of human history, the majority of people have lived on autopilot. Not because they're unintelligent or lazy, but because survival required it. You wake up, you do what needs to be done, you follow the patterns that worked for your parents and their parents. You don't question too much, because questioning doesn't put food on the table. And in that mode, consciousness stays relatively dormant. You're aware, obviously, but you're not aware that you're aware. You're identified with your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances. When something bad happens, you are the pain. When someone criticizes you, you are the hurt. There's no separation, no witness, no space between stimulus and reaction. Now, here's what I've observed, both in my own life and watching the world around me. When pressure increases, when life becomes unstable enough that the old patterns stop working, something shifts. People start waking up. Not everyone, not all at once, but in waves. They begin to notice the voice in their head, the repetitive thoughts, the emotional patterns they've been running for decades without questioning. They start to see that they're not just their thoughts. They're the awareness watching the thoughts. And that recognition, as subtle as it sounds, changes everything. But here's the uncomfortable part. Before that awareness stabilizes, before it becomes your new normal, there's a period of chaos. Because Everything that's been buried, everything you've been running from or denying or suppressing, all of that surfaces. You can't become more conscious without first becoming aware of what you've been unconscious about. And collectively, when this happens to millions of people simultaneously, it doesn't look like enlightenment. It looks like a breakdown. It looks like society coming apart at the seams. But what if it's not a breakdown? What if it's a breakthrough that hasn't finished breaking through yet? Think about it this way. Throughout history, every major leap forward in human civilization has been preceded by a period of intense disruption. The Renaissance came on the heels of the plague. The Enlightenment emerged from centuries of religious war and dogma. Every revolution, every transformation, every evolutionary jump, it starts with things falling apart. Because the old structure has to collapse before the new one can form. And that in-between period, that transition, is terrifying. It's uncomfortable. It feels like everything's going wrong. But it's actually the friction of transformation, the labor pains of something new trying to be born. So when you look at the world right now, the polarization, the anger, the division, the sense that people have lost their minds, you could interpret that as humanity's final decline. Or you could see it as the old consciousness, the old way of being, fighting desperately to survive as a new awareness begins to emerge. The more light you shine into a dark room, the more visible the shadows become. That doesn't mean the light is bad. It means it's doing exactly what light does. It reveals. And what's being revealed right now, collectively, are all the wounds we've been carrying, all the pain we've been ignoring, all the dysfunctions we've been normalizing for generations. Is it pleasant to watch? No. Is it comfortable to live through? Absolutely not. But is it necessary? I think it might be, because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. You can't transform what you refuse to see. And for the first time in human history, we're seeing everything. The lies we tell ourselves, the systems that exploit us, the ways we've been living that drain our spirit instead of nourishing it, it's all becoming visible. And yes, that's overwhelming. But it's also the first step towards something better. Now, here's where personal responsibility comes in, and this is crucial. Because it's one thing to understand what's happening collectively, but that understanding doesn't mean much if you don't apply it to your own life. You can't control what the world does. You can't stop the chaos or force people to wake up or make society change on your timeline. But you do have complete control over one thing: how you respond to what's happening around you. I've always been drawn to this idea, one I encountered years ago, that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose your attitude in any given situation. You can't always choose what happens to you. You can't choose how other people behave. But you can always choose how you meet it. You can react unconsciously, letting every strange interaction, every rude comment, every unsettling behavior pull you into fear or anger or judgment. Or you can pause, step back, and respond from a place of awareness rather than reaction. This is harder than it sounds, especially when you're surrounded by people who seem to be losing their center. When someone's strange or hostile or disconnected, your first instinct is to match their energy, to defend yourself, to pull away. But what if you tried something different? What if, instead of absorbing their chaos, you recognized it for what it is? Someone dealing with unseen pressures, unprocessed pain, unbalanced biology, all the things we've been talking about, and you chose not to take it personally? That doesn't mean you ignore mistreatment or let people walk over you. It means you stop letting other people's unconsciousness dictate your inner state. You become like an island of stability in a storm. And here's the interesting part. When you do that, when you hold your center while others lose theirs, you actually start to shift the energy around you. Not in some mystical, magical way, but in a very real, human way. People unconsciously mirror the energy they encounter. When you're calm, it gives them permission to be calm. When you're present, it reminds them presence is possible. You don't have to preach or teach or fix anyone. You just have to be the thing you want to see more of in the world. And this is where individual transformation becomes collective transformation. Because every person who wakes up, who chooses awareness over reaction, who holds their center in the midst of chaos, They become a node of coherence in the network, and those nodes start connecting. They find each other, they reinforce each other, and slowly, person by person, conversation by conversation, interaction by interaction, the culture begins to shift. Not from the top down, not through policy or force, but from the inside out, through the accumulation of conscious choices made by individuals who decided they weren't going to participate in the madness anymore. And this brings me to something I think about a lot, what the next era of humanity could look like if enough people make this shift. Because right now, we're living in a transitional period. We have the technology of the future, but the consciousness of the past. We have tools that could connect us, heal us, educate us, liberate us, but we're using them in ways that often do the opposite. We're building incredible systems while ignoring the human element, the soul, the need for meaning and purpose and genuine connection. But what if we integrated those pieces? What if we built a society that was designed for consciousness instead of just productivity? Imagine technology created not to addict you, but to support your awareness. Food systems designed not for profit, but for health and vitality. Education that taught people how to think and feel and question, not just what to memorize. Work that connected to purpose, not just paychecks. Communities built on authentic relationship rather than transactions. This isn't utopian fantasy. It's entirely possible. The tools already exist. What's missing is the shift in consciousness that would allow us to use them wisely. And we're prototypes of that shift. Every person reading this, every person who's felt that something's off and started asking deeper questions, you're part of the transition. You're debugging the emotional code, clearing out the old programming, learning to operate from a different level. It's messy work. It's uncomfortable work. You don't always know if you're doing it right. But the fact that you're doing it at all means you're part of the solution, not the problem. Because here's the thing most people don't realize. You don't have to wait for society to change before you change. You don't have to wait for permission or for the right circumstances or for everyone else to catch up. You can start living from that higher awareness right now, today, in small ways that accumulate over time. You can choose presence over distraction, connection over performance, compassion over judgment, meaning over consumption, and every time you make that choice, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. So let me bring this into something practical, something you can actually use the next time you encounter that strangeness in people that we've been talking about. Because understanding all of this intellectually is one thing, but applying it in real time is where the transformation actually happens. Next time someone feels off, when you're talking to them and you get that sense of distance or hostility or numbness, instead of reacting with frustration or pulling away, take a breath and remember what's really going on. This person might be battling pressures you can't see. They might be running on disrupted neurochemistry, unprocessed trauma, cultural conditioning that's crushing their spirit. They might be stuck in patterns they don't even recognize. And none of that is about you. It's not personal. It's not a reflection of your worth or a judgment on who you are. It's just someone struggling to function in a system that wasn't designed for human thriving. When you see it that way, something shifts. You stop taking it as an attack and start seeing it as a symptom. And that creates space for compassion instead of defensiveness. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior or tolerate abuse. It means you don't let someone else's unconsciousness pull you into unconsciousness. You stay awake. You stay present. You recognize what's happening without absorbing it. And often, just by doing that, by holding that space of awareness, you create an opening for something different to happen. Not always. Some people aren't ready. But sometimes your calm in the middle of their chaos is exactly what they need to remember they can be calm too. And here's the deeper truth behind all of this, the thing that ties everything together. People have changed. There's no denying that. The strangeness you feel, the shift in energy, the sense that something fundamental is different, it's all real, but you've changed too. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the reason the world feels so unfamiliar isn't because everyone else has gotten worse. Maybe it's because the awareness in you has gotten sharper, brighter, more sensitive. You're seeing things you didn't see before. You're feeling things you didn't feel before. And that's not a curse. It's a gift. Because as you become more conscious, you naturally start noticing unconsciousness in others. As you heal your own patterns, you become more aware of unhealed patterns around you. As you step into presence, you feel the absence of presence more acutely. The world hasn't necessarily gotten darker. Your light has gotten brighter. And now, the shadows are easier to see. That's uncomfortable, yes. But it's also evidence that you're evolving, that you're not the same person you were 5 years ago, or even 5 months ago. You're waking up, and part of waking up is realizing how much of the world is still asleep. So we're standing at a crossroads, all of us, right now. On one path, you can look at the chaos and conclude that humanity is doomed, that people are broken beyond repair, that it's only going to get worse. And if you feed that narrative, if you focus only on what's falling apart, you'll find endless evidence to support it. But on the other path, you can see this moment for what it might actually be, a transformation in progress, messy and painful and confusing, but necessary. You can see that some people are being pulled down into fear, yes, but others are being drawn upward into love, into awareness, into a way of being that's more conscious, more connected, more alive. And that's why it feels like two different worlds right now, because in a sense, it is. One world is fading, the old patterns breaking down, the old consciousness losing its grip. And another world is being born, still fragile, still forming, but undeniably present. You can feel it in certain conversations, in moments of unexpected kindness, in the people who are choosing differently, who are refusing to participate in the fear and division and numbness. Those moments are seeds. And every time you act from awareness instead of reaction, you're watering those seeds. You're helping the new world take root. So if this message has stirred something in you, if you felt that same quiet shift moving through humanity, through your own life, then you're not alone. There are more of us than you think, people who are asking deeper questions, who are refusing easy answers, who are committed to staying awake even when it's uncomfortable. And the more we connect, the more we share this understanding, the stronger that new consciousness becomes. That's why I'm here, having this conversation with you. Not to convince you of anything, but to remind you of what you probably already sense. Something profound is happening in the human story, and you're part of it. If you want to be part of spreading this awareness, helping this conversation reach others who are feeling the same unseen change, just tap the thumbs up. It's a small gesture, but it matters. It tells the algorithm that this message is worth sharing, and it helps it find its way to people who need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring these deeper questions together, to keep walking this path of awakening and understanding, consider subscribing. Because this journey, this shift in human consciousness, it's not something we're meant to walk alone. We're in this together, figuring it out as we go, stumbling sometimes, but moving forward nonetheless. The truth no one tells you is this. People seem strange right now because we're all in the middle of the biggest transformation our species has ever attempted. We're trying to evolve in real time, to shift from unconsciousness to awareness, from separation to connection, from fear to love. And that process is never clean, it's never comfortable. But it's always, always worth it. Because on the other side of this turbulence, on the other side of this strangeness and confusion and upheaval, there's a version of humanity that's more integrated, more awake, more aligned with what we're actually capable of becoming. And you, by being here, by asking these questions, by feeling what you're feeling and refusing to ignore it, you're already part of that transformation. Don't let the chaos convince you otherwise. Don't let the strangeness in others make you doubt your own clarity. You're seeing what you're seeing because you're ready to see it. And that means you're ready to be part of the solution, part of the awakening, part of the new world being born inside the old one. So keep your awareness sharp. Keep your compassion active. Keep choosing presence over panic, meaning over distraction, connection over isolation. And trust that every time you do, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing